If you've hit a dead end with your tennis improvement in spite of trying all the most popular drills and exercises and training aids, and you've heard all of the most popular analogies and explanations, and it just feels like this and just do it like that, then you need to watch this lesson. Because a lot of times, those training aids and those explanations and those analogies and those special drills, they just don't work. And it's because our old habits are just overpowering whatever that new thing is. And that includes my own drills and analogies and exercises and training aids and all that sort of thing. It would be nice if those worked 10 times out of 10, but they just don't. So I want to give you a quick example of that I'm working with a remote student right now and tell you the solution so that you can get unstuck. So what you're seeing behind me is an old video that I recorded, I think it was like 13 years ago. I love using long socks to work on tennis rhythm and smoothness. I've got tennis balls at the end of the socks, and the goal here is to move the socks through a continuous circular motion like I am here. Actually, that's the demo of what not to do, with the balls kind of going all over the place. The goal is to maintain rhythm and smoothness and keep the socks moving smoothly and fluidly all the way through. And the whole idea here is this is supposed to teach somebody who has bad rhythm and maybe has a hitch in their motion and doesn't know how to properly maintain their momentum and smoothness through a serve, how to actually feel that and how to actually make it work. So here is an example of a student that I've been working with remotely for a little while on her serve. And this is what her serve looked like before. So watch this motion here. I'm going to play it in full speed first. And you can see there's a lot that we can potentially focus on here. And we're kind of rebuilding this from the ground up. But look at how stark of a pause or a hitch there is at the bottom or the back of her motion, kind of around where the air quotes like back scratch position would typically be. Look at how her racket just comes to a stop and then she pushes forwards. After all the momentum completely is killed, she's trying to re-accelerate the racket with her arm in her hand and kind of hop up towards the ball. But there's no flow of energy. And again, there's a lot. The goal of this isn't to deconstruct this serve. I'm just showing you a specific example here. There's a lot to tackle with this serve. But the most recent thing that we are addressing is her rhythm and her smoothness and the fact that she is used to just stopping the racket down at the bottom, which is not uncommon. It happens all the time. So I showed her the exercise with the socks, and here's her first attempt at actually doing the drill. And you'll notice, like right out of the gate, it doesn't look like the way I was doing it. In fact, she's just doing the exact same thing she was doing with her racket, right? She's going up to her trophy pose, dropping the socks. The tennis balls are colliding with her body, and she's literally just stopping her hand. And so the socks the balls in the socks are continuing their momentum and her energy, even though her hand has stopped, and that's causing the balls to whack her in the back. And then she's re-engaging her arm and her energy to push the socks and the balls up towards the point of contact. So at first blush, this is like a fail, right? Like she's not able to maintain the rhythm and smoothness. And this is where tennis players and tennis coaches, frankly, really get stuck. And it's just kind of a dead end when there's a problem, a flaw, technically, and then there's a drill or like a analogy, like, oh, topspin is just like turning the doorknob. Just turn your hand with the racket like you're opening a door by turning a doorknob, or whatever. Or there's a training aid in a feel exercise. Here's the deal: those are only as useful as the student, as the player is receptive and pliable mentally and physically. And to the degree that the student is deeply, deeply grooved in mentally and physically, aka their habits, their neurological pathways have been trained over decades and tens of thousands of repetitions doing it in inefficient, unathletic, poor way. If that's present, then all the explanations and all the training aids and all the drills and all the analogies in the world aren't going to just magically clear the slate and wipe everything away and start from ground zero. And in addition to that, arm them with a athletically sound, a fundamentally sound, biomechanically sound way of moving their body. It takes more effort than that. So sometimes, and just to be really clear, I'm not trying to say that those training aids and coaching approaches don't ever work. They just only work as well as the athlete's mind and body are open and receptive to doing things in a different way. And for many tennis players, they're just not. They're locked in to their old way of doing it. And so it doesn't matter how clever the drill is or how revolutionary the training aid is, they're just kind of in a rut. And so they have to consciously, very deliberately, very painstakingly force a different way of doing it. So why did I even bother giving her, the socks? Why did I even bother prescribing this training? Because sometimes it works. But what if it doesn't? That's the big question. And tennis coaches a lot of times have their kind of menu of options, menu of drills, menu of training aids, menu of analogies. And once they get to the end of that menu, it's like, well, I guess you just can't do it. And in my experience, training everyday athletes, everyday tennis players, there's always a path forwards. It just has to be chunked down smaller and smaller and smaller. And we have to take things slower and with higher degree of control, higher degree of awareness, so that the student can actually manage whatever the change is in a very kind of chunked down, bite-sized way, and then slowly plug that back into the larger motion or the larger movement or the larger habit, whatever it is. And unfortunately, tennis players tend to be kind of allergic to taking things slow. They tend to be rather impatient. They tend to want results sooner rather than later. And I understand that. Of course, we all want results faster if it's possible. But sometimes it's just not. And it depends on how old and how deeply grooved that habit is. Sometimes a training aid will immediately snap an everyday athlete into the better way of doing it. And that's fantastic. You should celebrate that as the player. You should celebrate that as the coach when some kind of shortcut actually works. But you should also be fully prepared for it potentially not to. And what is the step after that? And the short answer is going slower, narrowing down the focus to be more specific, being more mindful, being more deliberate about just making sure that we just make one movement correct, and then slowly adding on to that until it starts to resemble a normal, full, regular, proper motion or habit or movement, whatever it happens to be. So I want to commend this player and all of you watching for leaving your comfort zone, for trying different things, even when it doesn't work. Please understand that that's not something that you should be really disappointed and upset about. That's, frankly, in my experience, focusing on everyday tennis players, that's normal. That the first route, the first prescription doesn't work, and then we have to pivot, we have to modify, we have to be creative. And it takes a great amount of patience and perseverance by the student in order to accept that I just can't do it yet. Try something different and try something different until you find the right amount of kind of juggling that the student can actually manage, and then slowly build on top of that. So long story short, keep trying the training aids, keep trying the special drills, keep trying the analogies, and it's like this and feels like that, because it's always worth a shot. But if it doesn't work, please know that it's not the drill's fault, it's not the training aid's fault, it's not the coach's fault, unless the coach doesn't have anything further for you and they're just like, well, guess you can't hit topspin. I guess you can't hit, proper service motion. No, of course you can. The question is just how small of a focus, how narrow of a focus is required. How slow do we have to take this until you actually can do it properly? And how long is it going to take to slowly build on top of that? That's hard work. It's hard for the coach and it's hard for the player. And if you're in the middle of that right now, I want you to know that I really honor and respect you tremendously, because it's very hard work. I know, because it's the process I have to follow too anytime I want to try to change something in my game. And that's normal for everyday athletes and players. Hopefully this was a little bit helpful, gave you a little bit of perspective. And Maria, if you happen to see this, amazing work with your serve. It's a work in progress. We're going to get there. And the rest of you out there watching, be patient and stay dedicated to the process, and you can improve. No matter how old you are, no matter what your level is, no matter what your level of talent or coordination is, you can get better as long as you focus on the right things in the right ways. Take care.